There are things that happen in football that everyone sees and nobody says out loud, not because the information is hidden, not because the evidence is unclear, but because saying it out loud requires naming something that the people who run this sport have decided cannot be named. It requires pointing at a decision made by the most powerful sporting organization on the planet and saying directly and without diplomatic softening that the decision was wrong, not complicated, not nuanced, wrong. Tonight, FIFA banned a player from a World Cup semifinal for something that happens 50 times in every professional football match played anywhere on Earth, in training sessions, in friendly matches, in Champions League finals, in World Cup finals. Something so instinctive, so deeply embedded in how human beings communicate with each other during physical competition that most players do it without awareness, without choice, without any conscious decision to do anything other than have a private conversation in a very loud place. He covered his mouth with his hand while speaking to an opponent. That is it. That is the entirety of what he did. And for that gesture, for that instinct, for that entirely normal human behavior, he will not play in a World Cup semifinal. His teammates will play those minutes without him. And the outcome of the match, the outcome of a World Cup semifinal, has been shaped by a rule that the referee had no choice but to enforce, and that FIFA had every choice not to create. Stay until the end of this video, because I am going to give you everything tonight, the specific moment, the rule behind it, why the rule exists, who it has affected since it was introduced, what it is actually designed to protect, and the question that nobody in the mainstream press is asking with the directness it deserves. Subscribe if you are new here, and let's go. Let me start with the moment itself, because the moment deserves to be described precisely, not summarized, not contextualized into comfortable vagueness, precisely. The match was in the semifinal stage, the score was level, the atmosphere in the stadium was everything that a World Cup semifinal is supposed to be. 60-something thousand people who understood exactly what they were watching. A match with no margin for error on either side. A match where every decision, every tactical call, every individual moment of quality or failure carries consequences that players and coaches and fans will carry for years. In the second half, a confrontation developed between two players following a foul. Not a violent confrontation, not a confrontation involving threats or aggression beyond what any serious student of football accepts as part of competition at this level. Two players who had been competing hard all night in a close match, having the kind of exchange that players have had in every serious football match since the sport was codified. And during that exchange, the player covered his mouth with his hand. He was not trying to hide abuse. There is no evidence of that. There is no audio. There is no lip-reading confirmation. There is no witness account that goes beyond the gesture itself. He covered his mouth because he wanted a private conversation in a very public place, because the cameras are everywhere and the microphones are closer than they have ever been, and the instinct to have a private moment in the middle of 60,000 people is a human instinct so basic that it requires no explanation to anyone who has ever been in a loud room and wanted to say something only one person was meant to hear. The referee saw the gesture. The referee had no choice. The rule is clear and the rule is absolute. Straight red card. No warning, no context considered, no distinction between a player whispering tactical information and a player saying something genuinely abusive. The hand over the mouth, automatic ejection. His World Cup is over for the moment it mattered most. Now I need to take you back to where this rule came from, because you cannot understand tonight without understanding the decision that made tonight possible. 18 months ago in the Champions League, a confrontation happened between Vinicius Jr. and an Argentine player from Benfica. Cameras captured the Argentine player covering his mouth while saying something directly to Vinicius. Vinicius accused him of racist abuse. UEFA investigated, FIFA investigated. Lip-reading experts were brought in and could not reach agreement. There was no audio evidence, there was no confession, there was no witness testimony that confirmed what was said beyond the gesture of covering the mouth. FIFA sanctioned the Argentine player with a 6-match international ban, based on the gesture, based on the act of covering his mouth, based on the decision that the gesture itself was sufficient evidence of intent to abuse in the absence of any confirmable evidence of the specific words used. That decision created a problem that sporting governance bodies recognize as one of the most dangerous positions an institution can occupy. They had punished a player for something they could not prove. The punishment was real, and the evidence was not. And having created that precedent, they faced a choice. admit the precedent was wrong and expose the original punishment as unjustified, or codify the precedent into a rule that made future punishments consistent with the original decision. They chose codification. Any player who covers their mouth during a confrontation receives a straight red card. No proof required of the content of what was said, no context considered, no distinction between privacy and abuse. The gesture alone is sufficient. The rule was introduced for this World Cup as part of a package of 13 new regulations, and 7 of the most powerful football federations in the world formally objected before the tournament began. Argentina said it, England said it, Spain said it twice, France said it, Portugal said it, Germany said it, Colombia said it, 7 nations. The same conclusion reached independently. These rules are unworkable. These rules will cause damage that cannot be repaired. FIFA did not change the rules. And tonight we are here. Let me tell you what 50 times a match actually means, because I want you to sit with that number properly before we move on. Watch any professional football match at any level with one specific focus. Watch how often players cover their mouths while speaking, not just in confrontations, in tactical conversations with teammates, in instructions from captain to defender. In the moment a midfielder turns away from a press and wants to tell his striker exactly where the ball is going before the press closes him down. In the 47th minute when a player wants to tell his goalkeeper something about the opposing striker's movement pattern without the opposing striker hearing. In every one of these moments, players cover their mouths because they are having a conversation they intend to be private. Count those moments in a single match. The number is not 5, it is not 10. In any competitive professional football match played under normal conditions, the number of times players cover their mouths during communication is somewhere between 30 and 70, depending on the intensity of the match and the tactical complexity of what is being discussed. FIFA has made every single one of those moments a potential straight red card offense. Every tactical whisper, every instruction from a captain who does not want the opposing team to hear the adjustment being made, every private comment between two players who have been competing physically for 90 minutes and want a moment of communication that belongs to them rather than to the broadcast. The rule does not distinguish between any of these situations. The hand over the mouth, straight red. No proof required of anything except the gesture. Now, I want to give you my honest opinion, and I want to be precise about where the dishonesty in this situation actually lives, because there is dishonesty here, and it is not where the large broadcasters and the comfortable football media will point you. The dishonesty is not in the referee's decision tonight. The referee applied a rule that exists. He had no authority to not apply it. He did his job correctly, and he will spend the rest of his career knowing that he correctly applied a rule that should not exist. The dishonesty is not in the player who was sent off. He did something completely normal, something he has done thousands of times in his career without consequence, because until this World Cup, it was not a sending-off offense to have a private conversation. The dishonesty is not even in the specific content of the rule itself considered in isolation. There is an argument, a weak and badly constructed argument, but an argument that covering your mouth during a confrontation can enable abuse that would otherwise be detectable. The argument is weak because the solution to that problem is audio technology, not gesture bans. But the argument exists. The dishonesty is in the reason the rule was created. The rule was not created because FIFA believed that covering your mouth during a confrontation was fundamentally incompatible with fair and respectful football competition. The rule was created because FIFA needed to be consistent with a disciplinary decision it made under intense media pressure 18 months ago. A decision made without adequate evidence. A decision that was wrong. A decision that, rather than being admitted and corrected, was instead protected by building a regulatory framework around it. The rule exists to protect the institution from the accusation that it punished a player without justification. And tonight, a World Cup semifinal paid the price for that institutional protection. FIFA had an alternative. They had the resources and the technology to install pitch-side audio monitoring that could actually capture what players say during confrontations. That technology exists and is used in other sports. It would have provided real evidence instead of requiring referees to make instant judgments based on a gesture. They chose not to invest in that technology. They chose to ban the gesture. They chose the shortcut that protected their past decision over the investment that would have actually solved the problem they claimed to be addressing. That choice has a victim tonight. A player who covered his mouth with his hand while speaking in a World Cup semifinal will watch the rest of that match from somewhere he was not supposed to be. His teammates will play without him through the most important minutes of their footballing lives. And whether the result would have been different with 11 men is a question that football cannot answer. What football can answer is whether the rule that made this happen should exist. And the answer to that question is no, it should not exist. It should never have been created. And the fact that it was created tells you something important about an institution that chose image management over sporting integrity and then watched a World Cup semifinal bear the consequences. 4 questions for the comments. First, should FIFA suspend this rule immediately before the final is played or allow a tournament to conclude under regulations that have just produced this result in a semifinal? Second, does the affected player have any realistic legal recourse through sports arbitration, even knowing that match results are almost never reversed? Third, what does it mean for the final that both teams now know this rule can and will be enforced in the most high-pressure moments of this tournament? And fourth, if FIFA had invested in audio technology instead of creating this rule, would the original incident that triggered all of this have been handled more justly? Tell me what you think. This channel reads everything in the comments, and the debate on this question matters because the debate eventually reaches the people who make the decisions. Subscribe if you are not already here. Share this video with anyone who watched tonight's match and does not fully understand why what they saw happened. A player is banned from a World Cup semifinal for covering his mouth with his hand. Everyone saw it. Nobody is saying it clearly enough. We just did. See you in the next one.